What's up, everybody? It's your boy True Element 78 in the building with
Your reigning and defending Mondo Lucha Hall of Famer and the man with lust in his eyes, the X-Man Xavier Mustafa.
And I am here, the natural Chris Black, but I am also feeling like WWE programming, which to say I feel like crap. But I'm here.
And today is Saturday, November 2nd, 2019, and you are tuned in to the 30th episode of Saturday Night Slamcasters. Today is a very special edition of Saturday Night Slamcasters where we'll be covering the Viceland series Darkside of the Ring. And on today's episode, we're going to be covering the Match Made in Heaven episode that featured the Macho Man Randy Savage and Miss Elizabeth. This series is going to be taking us all the way into 2020, dropping opposite weeks of our regularly scheduled programming. And it should end on January 4th, 2020. For those of you who don't know, the Match Made in Heaven, like I just said, it covered the story of Macho Man and his relationship with Miss Elizabeth throughout their time in WWE and their brief time in WCW, as well as their unfortunate passings. So we'll kick things off with Xavier Mustafa on what he thought about the documentary, and then we'll just continue the discussion.
I enjoyed the episode very much. It was very sad at the end because, these are two people that I watched growing up as a kid, and Macho Man was one of my favorite characters. I thought it was very, very well done.
I really enjoyed this program because I really enjoy the history of pro wrestling. Anyone who's involved in this business, you gotta love the history, and I just can't get enough of stories from the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, even to maybe the last 10 years. I enjoy hearing stories of the other guys and their experiences in the business. And like Mustafa said, yeah, it's kind of saddens me because these are people that we did grow up watching and admiring, and that's why we got in the ring, was because we watched these guys growing up, and we're like, man, this is something that I want to do. Yeah, I absolutely love this series. I hope it continues.
Right. So what did you guys discover any new information or things that you didn't necessarily know about Macho Man and Elizabeth's relationship? I could say one of the things that I didn't know that I discovered through here was that Macho Man was a second generation wrestler. I didn't know that his dad had ran outlaw promotions in the past, and that's where he was actually discovered. And I didn't know how wild Miss Elizabeth had gotten once they arrived at WCW, and also that Macho Man and Miss Elizabeth were no longer married when they were in WCW. Those were revelations that were news to me. Anything you guys discovered?
I discovered that Elizabeth is not in the WWE Hall of Fame, which I find surprising. And I guess I learned a little bit more about the Macho Man from his brother. Like, I thought that was kind of cool that you got his perspective on everything. And a little bit more details about kind of what happened with Elizabeth. Kind of knew what happened, but kind of like, Lex's kind of version of the story and more details about how Elizabeth passed.
I didn't realize how protective Macho Man was with Miss Elizabeth. I understand you don't want your woman in the business, especially back in the 80s, but yet to the degree that he kept her protected and kept her in her locker room and didn't want the boys to talk with her and try to keep her away from everybody. Just super paranoid. I didn't know that about him. I saw it on screen and you kind of think, oh, that's just a character, that's just a gimmick. No, he was super protective over Elizabeth.
Same way Rusev needs to be.
Man. Macho Man said in a different interview, he was like, yeah, I've done one storyline with my wife, and I no longer have a wife. So.
Like they said that when the one angle was going down with, I think he was with Sherry, and I think they said that it was Elizabeth's family that was at the house when they got there and was can't come in.
No, it wasn't. How did the story? No, it wasn't the story with Sherry. It was the story with which is one of my favorite stories. The storyline with Jake the Snake Roberts and Macho Man, and Jake the Snake's put his hands on Elizabeth, and it's still real to me, damn it. And
the family was like, "You ain't coming in until you avenge Elizabeth. They said it. Wait till the pay-per-view.
Kayfabe was alive and well.
Had to beat the brakes off of Jake the Snake. But that's one of my favorite stories. I never get tired of hearing Jake the Snake tell that story. So Jake the Snake to me is one of the greatest storytellers and probably one of the best promos and one of the best heels ever in the business. But the story of Macho Man confronting him in the locker room and basically asking him if the snake was fixed or not, and him demanding that Jake the Snake make the snake bite him and that he doesn't leave that room until it's time for them to go out there and do their segment to make sure.
No pills, no antidotes or nothing.
I always said it's kind of funny if he was really paranoid, if he was just paranoid of the snake like actually killing him, or of people were so protective of their spots back in the day. He's like, he'll do whatever it takes to take my spot. So.
No, remember, this was the era of the ribs where they played practical jokes on each other. I wouldn't put past someone not defanging and thinking that shit is funny.
I'm pretty sure in this day and age, if somebody were bit by a king cobra, they'll just be dead. There was no flight for lives. There was none of that.
All right,
it's been out of there. So I don't blame no Macho Man.
Yeah. Also, another thing I didn't know on Eric Bischoff's podcast that he had, I guess, prior to the 83 Weeks podcast, that Lex Luger came on and basically told the story of what happened with Miss Elizabeth. And it was also just interesting thinking about how Macho Man was, even though him and Miss Elizabeth, maybe he was good at setting boundaries. It does sound like he was very good at setting boundaries, I guess, because they said if you were friends, he'd do anything for you or whatever. But the fact that Miss Elizabeth and him weren't together but working in WCW and she's dating Lex Luger, I know they said Lex was married, so it was hidden, but how well was it hidden from Macho Man? That was one of the things that was interesting to me.
Mustafa, do you think someone could get away with that in the locker room today? I mean, I don't. They're probably as chatty as they are now as they were back then.
Too many camera phones. Somebody would have put a picture and tagged the wrong person in it. It would have been all on the dirt sheets.
I'm just saying, how did that not get around to Macho Man? I'm pretty sure they didn't have, I don't know, maybe they kept secrets better back then.
I mean, you would think about it. He had a lot to lose. When I say he, I say Lex Luger, if that were to get out.
You know what?
The boys found me out. Got me. You know what I'm saying? I don't think he would have gave two shits about the boys.
I'm going to have
the wife and the kids.
I'm going to have to shoot on Lex Luger for a second and talk about how big of a piece of crap this man is. Number one, he was never that great of a worker. I never liked the man as a worker, and I like him even less professionally. So,
well, I will defend him a little bit. I would say the man that he was. He has turned over a new leaf and tried to repair some of those bridges that he burned back in the day. So I'm all about second chances. So give a brother a chance.
The hell with that. Motherfuckers always turn to God when they know the days is counting down. They about to go. So I'm not buying it.
So we spoke about Miss Elizabeth not being in the WWE Hall of Fame, and Chyna's in there now. So a lot of people will say it's probably because of how Miss Elizabeth passed that she's not in there. But now Chyna's in there. And Coco Beware is in there. So we have a full spectrum. And Sunny's still in there. She didn't have to give up her Hall of Fame ring. So Miss Elizabeth needs to go in this year if WWE really wants to make some good PR for themselves. She needs to go in.
That's shocking that she isn't in the Hall of Fame. Mustafa was saying earlier, she is the first woman of wrestling pretty much. Right. Or promoted as such. Right, first lady of wrestling.
Right, and I always like Jason Salamonster on Salamonster Sounds Off, how he always said when they tried to make the Mae Young Classic, and then it was a big outcry, and we're going to get into the Mae Young episodes of Darkside of the Rings in a couple of weeks. But it was very interesting how there was this outcry, so WWE just took the name away from the Mae Young Invitational. It was the Moolah. It was the Moolah. No. Oh, never mind. I'm thinking it was the Battle Royale. That was what it was. It was the Fabulous Moolah Battle Royale or whatever, and then it just had no name. And so they had the Mae Young Classic and the Fabulous Moolah thing, but they should have, instead of doing that, even if you weren't gonna do Miss Elizabeth, Sensational Sherry, they covered her a little bit in here. I always he said it should be called the Sensational Invitational or something like that. because she was out there getting it in with the boys.
Yeah.
So I just feel WWE does a poor job of putting their women over, especially when it comes to the Hall of Fame, because I don't even think Sensational Sherry also is not in the Hall of Fame.
What?
And that's why Booker T and Stevie Ray called them out when they put Harlem Heat in this year.
Oh, wow.
So
I thought for sure Sherry would be in the Hall of Fame. No?
nope. I guess unless
What? How the hell is Sonny in there and not Sensational Sherry and Miss Elizabeth?
you know what that mouth do. Come on, look. Triple H is in there. Shawn Michaels is in there. Shawn Michaels is a 2-time Hall of Famer. Oh, Triple H is in there yet. Oh, no, he is in there because of DX, but not Solo. But, yeah, come on.
Yeah, well, Triple H going to get in for a couple reasons.
Triple H
He's going to get in for Evolution. He's going to get in for DX. He's going to get in for himself. He's going to be the first 3 times.
4-time Hall of Famer.
Right? just for good measures.
So they're going to get the Affinity Gauntlet. Hall of Fame rings.
You're going to have 6 rings.
So who do you think is going to go in first? Miss Elizabeth, Chris Jericho, or CM Punk?
Elizabeth,
Punk, and then Jericho.
Yeah, so
you know what? I just thought of something else that I didn't realize. Now, maybe this was the young Mark in me, but I didn't realize that Macho Man and Elizabeth were already married. When they did their marriage on television, I thought that was
legit
their marriage.
Oh, okay.
It was on their way to getting divorced at that point.
So,
well, I mean, thinking back about these programs, it makes me remember what I liked about wrestling growing up, and what I love the most is that the emotions that they brought out, and like when Hulk Hogan and Macho Man were doing their thing, the altercation they had in the back when Hulk Hogan took Miss Elizabeth to the back after she got hurt, and they had the altercation where Macho Man attacked him. That seemed so genuine. That seemed so real. Didn't seem like an act. I thought these two really had beef. I thought Hogan had overstepped some boundaries by mistake. I mean, I thought it was real life. Again, maybe that was just a young Mark in me, but I don't know. You go back and you watch that program now. You tell me if he's faking, or it seems like a genuine fight between two guys.
Right. I know Xavier Mustafa was a much bigger WCW watcher than myself. I don't know how much Chris Black actually watched WCW.
I didn't.
But how much do you really remember Miss Elizabeth and Macho Man interacting around that time? Or was she managing Macho Man? What was she doing in WCW?
She was just part of NWO.
Yeah, and most of the time she just stood there and smiled a lot.
Did she
didn't really do much else?
Maybe I remember watching WCW when I saw Miss Elizabeth on there. I'm just like, oh wow, what did she do? You know, I'm surprised that she came over too. It looked like she got a boob job. Now y'all said that she got a little wild when she got away from Macho Man. Is it just me, or maybe I just didn't notice because they said Macho Man taped down everything, so maybe she just let him free once she got away from him. But it just seemed like she had a boob job. Again, maybe it's just me in my teenage brain at the time.
Everything seemed bigger back then. The only thing that probably think back to Major Guns and how that probably looked to you as a teenager.
Oh God.
Misfits in action. But I'm looking forward to continuing this series. Like I said, this was just the start of it. I think if you are an old school wrestling fan and don't really know a lot of the stories, it's a great series to get started. And I think they kicked it off well. Like I said, I really like how they were respectful to the business. They were respectful to the people they were covering. They tried to stay away from insinuating a lot of different things. A little bit of your imagination can wander just seeing how the character and real life did have a lot of crossover with how protective he was of her on screen versus how protective of her that she was. How protective that Macho Man was of Elizabeth off screen as well, like storming in on Linda Boya, Hulk Hogan's wife, and asking where Miss Elizabeth was when she tried to get away from him down in Miami and was sleeping on some dude's couch.
You know, listening to that story, that situation sounded like, if I didn't know any better, it sounded like Macho Man was an abusive husband. I'm just saying. That's what it sounds like.
Right.
Now, I don't know if that's true or not, but that story kind of got me goosebumps. When it's just like he drove down there, was like, where's she at?
Right.
And Hogan's just like, look, I'm not in this.
Hogan was like, they're
Yeah,
sorting
but
it.
you know what?
They found her.
Oh,
They're
what?
sorting it out.
Yeah, like I would think abuse, but then when I actually think about it, I'd be like, wait a minute. If my wife went all the way from where were they in Tennessee or Kentucky, all the way to
She was
Miami,
missing
and
her
then all of a sudden,
phone.
It
right, she
disappeared.
answering the phone. I'm gonna give you some time, but after a while, I'm gonna be like, okay.
Yeah,
all
you
right.
also got to think about it too. It's not like they didn't have cell phones. You didn't
Right.
have instant access. She didn't have a Facebook that she could be updating with statuses.
Can you imagine the drive down there? Macho Man probably like, "Ooh, she get down there now. She acting all brand new. Yeah, I got something for her." You know, he was probably complaining the entire time.
You're gonna be extra mad by the time you get there because you got to drive all the way down there. And I'm pretty sure he didn't start early in the morning. It's probably as late as night. He was tired.
No, imagine the drive home.
No anti-lock brakes back then.
There was probably a lot of yelling.
He probably
talking,
busted in the door.
talking to himself.
Probably busted in the door like, Hogan, where's she at, man?
Snap into a Slim Jim.
That's how he stayed awake. He was eating Slim Jims all the way down there.
Speaking of Slim Jim, I find it funny that they threw that in there.
Oh yeah,
And
how
the
much
thing, they're
money
just
he
like,
was
yeah,
bringing in? Didn't they say he
WCW
brought
signed him.
$275 million with him or something of Slim Jim money?
Right?
Yeah.
$750,000 per year endorsement.
Yeah.
Came
Macho
with
Man
Macho.
got Miss Elizabeth a $250,000 a year job just to stand around and look pretty.
Right,
Right.
that was more than everybody at WCW was
Ooh.
making, except the Wolfpack.
Yeah, except for
Tells
Kevin
me
Nash.
Hugh Morris was making $250. You mean to tell me Kevin Sullivan was making $250? You mean to tell me the Giant was making $250? Probably not.
You mean you tell me all the cruiserweights combined weren't making $250?
But other than that, you guys got anything else you want to say about the Dark Side of the Ring, episode 1?
Very interested in watching the rest of the series now that I watched the first episode. Like we were saying earlier, I think it was very, very, what's I'm looking for? Well done.
Right.
Absolutely. This is actually my third run through the series because it's just so good. I'm kind of a history buff. I love reading, listening about the old times, the stories involved. I absolutely love it. It's part of the business that I love. I'm really looking forward to the next episode.
All right. What is the next episode? Let me take a look at that. While I look that up, you guys go
Montreal
ahead.
screw job.
Oh yeah, Montreal screw job. All right. Other than that, you guys want to give out your social medias?
You catch me at Xavier Mustafa on Facebook and on Twitter.
And you can catch me at _natural_CB on Twitter and the Natural Chris Black on Facebook and Instagram.
All right, you guys have been tuned in to Saturday Night Slamcasters, a special edition, like I said, covering the Dark Side of the Ring Viceland series. The next episode in this series is going to be dropping on November 16th. But as far as the actual Saturday Night Slamcasters podcast, you can catch that coming up next week on November 9th. That'll be episode 31 for you guys. We up out of here. Holla at your boys. Peace. Come get slammed.